Woo, it's bright in here today. I never really film Wednesday videos in the daytime, but we're going camping, so I need to film, and it feels weird. I like to do the Wine Wednesday, you know, when the mood is a little bit more dim outside, not getting blasted by the sun. So today I'm switching up my wine for a more daytime appropriate beverage. If you guys are having, you know, a nightcap, that's okay. Happy Wednesday, you guys. I missed you. If you are new here, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Sherrilyn. I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. You already know I love and I appreciate you guys so much. I love when I see people be like, oh, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. And I'm like, no, I look forward to you guys on Wednesday. So the feeling is so mutual. Not a single comment of love and support goes unnoticed. I love you guys so much. Okay, so today we are going to talk about a mystery, and it has consumed my thoughts for over the past week now that I've learned about it. And there's a part of me that just feels like guilty that I didn't know about it earlier and I couldn't have, you know, got more involved in trying to sleuth out what's going on. And I have a feeling that you're gonna feel the same. The person who is the center of this mystery in this story, he has this way of just reading his story and hearing about him, captivating you and making you feel like he was one of your friends. So I don't know, that must have a big part of me feeling so connected already to it. And yeah, I'm sure you guys are gonna feel the same. So basically this story starts out on July 23rd, 2018. So this was 2 years ago. And there's these two hikers that come across this tent. They're on a hiking trail in Big Cypress National Preserve in Florida. And inside this tent, they discover the body of a dead man who to this day has never been identified or brought home to his family and friends, despite many photos taken of him by other hikers that he met along his journey. So I'm just going to delve a little bit more into the discovery and then get to where we are now, which is, we don't know. So the two hikers that discovered him, I believe they were friends, and I think their intention was just to do a day hike. So one of them had already been on the trail before, the other was new to it. And it sounds like their journey on the trail was just kind of full of ups and downs that day. It was pouring rain at one point. They encountered a flood in Big Cypress. It can be home to alligators and snakes and all the stuff that I am not down with. So they were getting this weather that could really attract these animals. But I guess they're deciding to trudge through. They want to keep going, accomplish their goal of the day. And then the weather kept shifting on them and getting super hot. So, I mean, I think they're just going through all of these emotions that I'm sure you would feel hiking. I've never been a hiking type. Mind you, after reading this story and just seeing how cute and close the community is, it definitely seems like something I may want to do one day. But anyways, so they get to the point where they're at the halfway point, but they know they're going to lose sun soon. So they're I guess we're just gonna have to keep going forward. We don't want to turn back and deal with all the stuff that we've already gone through. Let's just keep going. But they wanted to take a breather before forging on. So they see this campsite with a picnic table and a tent. And throughout that day, they hadn't seen any other hikers. They didn't bump into anybody else. So this was the first interaction that they were getting on the trail. And I think really they just needed to take a seat and have a snack and then move on. So they call out to the tent and they're hello, is anybody in there? And they see boots and shoes outside of it, but they're not sure if maybe the person who's in there is just gone for a little cruise themselves and is going to be coming back later. So they just sit at the picnic table and have their snack. And the one friend, after he's done, he starts to get back on the trail. And the other one, I'm assuming, had this feeling of just wanting to double check and make sure that whoever owned and belonged to this tent was okay if they were inside. Maybe they needed help or they were injured, who knows? So whatever the curiosity was, he looked inside and calls back for his friend. And he's like, hey, come back here. I don't think he's doing too well. So the guy inside the tent, he's not fully laying down. He's kind of propped in a little bit of an awkward angle and his eyes are open. So they're okay, he doesn't look well, but maybe he's consciously unconscious in a way. So they're calling to him and there's no response. So they're like, I don't think he's alive any longer. And they call 911. So investigators get there, and at first glance, everything seems to be okay. Nothing out of the ordinary. They're not suspecting foul play. He's not like beat up or anything like that. There's no gunshot wounds or stab wounds. So they're not thinking a homicide, but he is very, very frail looking. Just based on the appearance of the body, they figured he had probably been there for about 3 days, but his body weight was 83 pounds. And this man was 5'8", I believe, 5'8". So, I mean, that is tiny. For me, my first thought was like, oh my God, like, did he starve to death? Couldn't, get out to get any food? Was he like trapped in this forest? You're trying to figure out like how does that happen? Which, I mean, could be a possibility, but he wasn't that far from a reserve that he could have gone for more supplies. I think he was only like 4 miles away. So, I mean, when you're hiking long distances, that's like nothing to a hiker. And when they did his autopsy, his colon was also full, so he had been eating. And then when they looked further around the tent, although there wasn't like a substantial amount, there were still energy bars there. So there was like a food source. So investigators are looking around the tent. They also find $3,640 of cash on him, but they didn't find any ID, no debit cards, no credit cards, nothing. And he also didn't have a cell phone. So for a hiker, I mean, not even just a hiker, but anybody in society right now, I mean, that's just very, very rare. I know there are some people who don't, they just disconnect and that's how they live, and that's great. But I just feel like when you're out there hiking and you're just vulnerable to the wilderness, it's something you probably would want to have on you. So they're getting the feeling like this guy, he is purposely wanting to completely disconnect, disassociate himself from whatever identity he once had. There wasn't really anything unusual with his supplies or what he had in the tent. He was a single hiker, but he was hiking with a 2-person tent. He also had quite a substantial backpack, which will be talked about later on in this story as kind of being one of the main things people noticed because it was so big and heavy, which when you're doing long treks, you kind of want to lighten the load as much as possible. They found his t-shirt, shorts, ball cap that we're going to see a lot of photos in. He had 2 hiking poles, a filtered water bottle, and a couple notebooks. His body also didn't have very visible identifiers either. He didn't have like tattoos or piercings. He did have a scar though, but it would have been hidden to anybody who would have seen him just with like his shirt on. It went from like, I don't know, what is this? Like your solar plex right here on this base? It went from almost like his like upper stomach area down to his belly button. I've heard it described as faint and small. And then when I saw it, I was like, that is not. Like, it was very noticeable. So I don't know if it was just people hearing about it, but I actually had seen the photos. And I found it was quite obvious and an obvious identifier for anybody who would file a missing persons report or was looking for him. His physical description was that he had some salt and pepper hair, a salt and pepper beard. He had blue-gray eyes and perfect teeth, which was a main focus of investigators because they didn't feel like prior to his life of hiking that he was a nomad in any sense. Like, he obviously routinely maintained dental health and care, seeing a dentist. So there should be dental records somewhere. And then for his age, they believed he looked about 35 to 50 years old. So since they have no ID or cell phone or anything to try to identify him, they use his fingerprints and they run it through their databases. They ran it through several different databases. They went through their criminal database to make sure that if he had had any run-ins with the law or a criminal record, they could pull up his identification that way. And then they also searched like military databases to see if he ever served in the army and had his fingerprints on file there. When I was looking into this, I was like, oh, like such a possible CSI moment, but unfortunately, they all come back negative. So they looked through the surrounding areas of where he was found to see if anybody made missing persons reports. Again, nothing. So the next step is to create like a bulletin and have that sent out through the media and just kind of try to mass flood multiple regions to get the story out. So they have somebody come and do do a composite sketch based on his remains, because I mean, obviously they have a photo of him, but you can't submit that. So they send out this photo, and apparently within minutes, Collier County Sheriff's Department gets a message on their Facebook page. It's from a woman who calls herself a trail angel, and she believes that she had met this man and spoke with him because when she met him, he really stood out to her, and he was somebody that she kept thinking about and worrying about. Just a little background information, because I mean, I'm not a hiker, so I didn't know any of this stuff, and you know, if you aren't as well, that's okay. I will explain a little bit to you as best as I can, because I'm still not a hiker. I'm just going based off of what I've researched. But like I said, I've been learning a little bit about the community, and it just seems so tight-knit, so close and helpful. And one of the components of it is that there are these like trail angels, and basically they're there throughout your trek in different like locations in cities or counties, and they might go and leave packets of food and water and supplies at a campsite for you to like come across. Some of them also open up their homes to hikers, so if they need like a shower or a warm meal or somewhere just to stay for a little bit, they'll do something like that. A lot of them also give hikers rides to surrounding areas if they need to get more supplies, which I think is just so cute, because another term I learned was when you're doing long distance hikes, it's called through hiking, and it's basically like where you're like starting from like one state and like working your way through multiple and ending up somewhere that can usually take you up to a year to accomplish. So I can imagine that when you're doing something that intense and long, dealing with like all the elements and probably just like the exhaustion, having somebody like a trail angel would probably just be like exactly like an angel. So they speak to this woman, and she says, just looking at the sketch, she's almost 100% positive she has ran into this man before. She says she met him on January 24th, 2018 in Crestview, Florida. And their unidentified man, he was found in, I'm gonna say this wrong, I apologize. It's not a video of mine if I don't mispronounce something. So he was found in Ochope? Pick either. I like Ochope, Florida, which when I plugged it in to try to like see the distance, it looked like it was about 570 miles apart from where she would have met him. She says the man that she met identified himself as mostly harmless. That again is something very common when you are hiking. You are given like a trail name. I heard that the trail name is usually given to you, and if you want to accept it, you start introducing yourself by that trail name, if I'm correct. So the man she met, his name was Mostly Harmless. She said they talked for about 20 minutes, and he said that he had started his journey in New York, and he was headed down to Key West, which would be about another 650 miles from where she was meeting him at. And that's only like 220 miles from where the body was found. So it's sounding like this is probably the same guy, could be the same guy. She asked Mostly Harmless if he was using an app to get around. I think the app that she thought would be really helpful for him was the Florida Trail Guide app. I don't know if it's the same like style as it was back then, but I tried to find it and it looked really cool. It was like, I don't know if you've ever played, oh my gosh, what was that name, that game? Like Geocache? Is that still a thing? That was cool. I did it a couple times where you like get on the GPS and then you try to go and find like presents that people have like hidden. Oh, it was so cool. Oh, I really want to do that again now. Anyway, so this app, it's not exactly like that, but it's got like a GPS on it, and I believe that you can also join like a community post area on there where other hikers who have done the trail will leave like tips and tricks or fun and nice things to see within that area that you might not catch just like on the trail. So she's like, this one is really useful and helpful. And he's like, oh, like I'm not using an app. I don't have a cell phone. He told her that he just wanted to disconnect and just do it completely on his own. So he pulled out like a piece of paper, like just regular paper, and I guess on it was like a printed map of Florida, and then it had like an outline of where he should be heading. So from that encounter, she was worried about him, and that's why she never stopped thinking about him and always had him on her mind. She said she even offered him a place to stay if he wanted to have a shower. He politely declined, and then he just went on his way. But before he left, she asked if she could take a picture of him with a sticker that she gives every hiker that she encounters, and he agreed. So she sent the photo to the sheriff's department, And although he was much skinnier when he was found from the photo, they believed this was the man that was in the tent. So after they speak with her, she's not the only one who calls in. They're getting more and more and more tips and leads, and they're starting to be able to build like a timeline of his journey. One thing that's really interesting about a lot of these tips is so much of it is done through social media. So you can even go back yourself and hear stories about him and read them through like Reddit or some blog posts, a lot of Facebook pages. So through a lot of these stories being shared of people who are pretty sure that they met and knew him, it seems like the first sighting and encounter with him was somewhere in April 2017, and this was in New York. At this point, the guy who believed he met him said that he was going by the name Denim. Then the next one was in June. Another hiker met Denim and said that he had shared with him that he previously worked for a big company. He didn't give a specific name or anything like that, and that he recently quit. And he also said he'd been living in Bear Mountain Park, New York for about 2 weeks, and that he just decided to start hiking south on the Appalachian Trail one day. And it seems like just like that impulse almost is how he got his name, because for the first 2 weeks of him hiking, he was wearing denim jeans, which isn't normally experienced hiking attire. So it was something that people on the trails immediately noticed, and then that's how he got that nickname. After that, he's reported staying at the visitor center in Unionville, New York. The people who met him there said he was so friendly. They had some pizza with him across the street, and he also shared with them that he was just starting on this journey. Sometime in June or July, he's photographed, and now he's in Pennsylvania in a town called Duncannon. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. So this is like 170 miles from where he was last reported being seen. From where he was last reported being seen. And in this photo, he's looks to be just loving life and having some food with fellow hikers in a church. And then again in June or July, both of those accounts, like, we're not 100% sure which month, but close. Someone meets Denim on the trail, and he says that he hikes with him for about a week on and off. It sounds like they just kind of kept running into each other. One would like accelerate a little and the other would fall back, and then vice versa. So coming and going and hiking with each other during those meetup points. So this hiker said they got along really well, and since they had more time spent together, they were able to have some deeper conversations than anybody who had reported from this point. He said that Denim told him before he started hiking like the Appalachian Trail, he was hiking in an area called Harriman State Park in New York. He told him that he was feeling really depressed and just at a low point in his life and he needed a change. And when he saw a sign for the Appalachian Trail, he just decided to start hiking it because he was feeling like staying in like the same area and sleeping within the park, he thought that he was going to get in trouble. So that's how he started hiking the Appalachian Trail, it sounds. And Denim also told this guy that since hiking, he had never felt more happy in his entire life, and he was experiencing like this new joy that he never had, which just like, it just pulls on your freaking heartstrings. So on July 28th, he's about 80 miles out of Duncannon, and he's spotted in Raven Rock in Maryland. And then in early August, he runs into a hiker in, like these names are gonna kill me. Why the crazy, why? Like, why do we need to make names so hard to pronounce? He runs into a hiker in Shenandoah. It's in Pennsylvania. Oh wait, no, I think it's in Virginia. No, it's not in Pennsylvania. It's in Virginia, which means that there's multiple ones. We've named multiple cities impossible names. Okay, so he's in Virginia, and this is about 125 miles away from his last encounter. And the hiker who saw him here says that when he had met Denim, he was hiking with an older woman with gray dreadlocks. And then the next photo of him in August is in Front Royal at a hostel, and he's photographed with a woman with gray dreadlocks. So it sounds like if it's the same woman, they must have been traveling for a little bit together. But from my understanding, I don't believe this woman has ever been identified or come forward with her experience with him. And that would be really interesting because it sounds like, given the time that they had together and stopping at like multiple areas with each other, I'd assume it's quite a bit of time to bond and share stories. And maybe she has like a further in-depth look in his life. But yeah, from my knowledge, I don't know. I don't think that she's ever come forward. So the next time he's photographed is on August 25th. He's in Virginia still at Calf Mountain Shelter, and he's photographed with a group of hikers, and people who met him here said that he told them he was from Brooklyn. So this is like the first time potentially we're finding out where he could be from. The next day, he switches up and goes to a different hostel, and then the following day, he goes to another one, and he's there for about 2 nights, I think. And at this hostel, he's also photographed with a group of hikers. By the 7th and 8th of October, he's in Demacus, Virginia, and he stayed in a hostel called Woodchuck's Hostel. He's there for a couple nights because I guess there was a hurricane that was coming through, and it looked like it was headed on the trail. So him and fellow hikers were at this hostel. So they got to hang out a little bit, and he's photographed at a pizza parlor with this group. And I don't know if it was on this specific occasion, but I read somewhere, and I'm going to try to find it. I couldn't find it again when I was trying to like organize my notes, but I did read somewhere that he was only eating the pizza crusts. I read that this could have been because he might have been vegan or vegetarian and didn't eat cheese. And then there's other theories that he may have had an eating disorder and he didn't eat many calories, which potentially could make sense just given his weight when he was found. Some people who also met him along the way did mention that several times he had said that he used to be overweight. So there definitely is a potential that maybe food obsession could have been the reason. But again, I'm not sure. I can't figure out where I originally saw that. So I don't know if that was specifically this occasion or just maybe one day he just didn't want to eat the full pizza and like the crust. I mean, I love the crust. I do feel like there is something with like the calories though, because in one of his notebooks in his tent, he was compiling like some recipes to create some hiking bars of his own. He had a few different flavors going, and then he had all of the calories and the macros, protein, sugar content, but it was quite low. So it also kind of ties into like his naivete. Look at me. Can't pronounce Shenandoah, but I can say naivete. But yeah, his notes did kind of tie into that because you can see that he wasn't well versed in the amount of like protein and energy you're gonna need to sustain your body for that much hiking. During this couple day trip, everybody again just had nothing but amazing things to say about him. They said he was super friendly. They loved being around him. And in this stop, I think is an actual photo of his backpack, which weighed like 53 pounds. And one of his fellow hikers wanted to take a photo of how much it weighed and what it looked like because again, like tying into his inexperience, that was just so uncommon for long journeys like that because you want to be as like light as possible to not exert so much energy and just to be able to like sustain yourself for that amount of time. So here at this stop, there's actual photos of how crazy people thought that he had like a 53-pound backpack with him. So next he's tracked down in Hiawassee in Georgia. He's around 230 miles from his last sighting, and this is around November 22nd to 26th. And here, investigators think they have a really big lead to go off of because he checks into a hostel and he used the name Ben Billamy. At this hostel, he stayed one night, and then I guess the next day was Thanksgiving, so he must have stayed somewhere else, and then he went back to this hostel for another 2 nights. And then before leaving here, a shop owner remembers him very clearly because he sold him a tent that he was having a really tough time selling. It was a 2-man tent, the yellow tent that he was found in. And my understanding is that it was quite bulky for these long hikes, so it wasn't something that anybody wanted to buy, and that's why he was having a tough time selling it. But Denim buys it, and again, this just adds to like the standout feature of things that people remembered him by from this point forward. On December 2nd, 2017, he's photographed in Blairsville, Georgia, and he stops at a shop called Mountain Crossings. And here he talks with the sales associates. He introduces himself as Denim, and he says he's hiking the Appalachian Trail and that he used to work in the tech world for about a decade prior, and that he originally planned on just hiking for 2 weeks. And that turned into him starting in New York and ending up at his shop in Georgia. When he was at the shop, he asked for some data to be printed and some maps for the Pinhoti? I'm sorry, guys. The Pinhoti Trail, clearly not a hiker. And then he told this guy that his ultimate goals and sights were set on Key West in Florida. The photo that they take of him at this shop goes up on their Instagram and Facebook page, which is still up there. And you can see kind of how much of an impression he made on so many people, because other hikers who recognized him from like New York and very early on in his journey saw it and were like, oh my God, like look at how far he got. And then a lot of stories were exchanged that way. I think around this time too is the time where he is videotaped on a GoPro. Those moments to me, I'm just like, it makes somebody even so much more real and connected to you. But yeah, it's tough to hear, but it's just such a surreal feeling to like see somebody like moving on video. And I think this is the only video that was taken of him on his hike. A couple days after Blairsville, he's photographed again and he's in Springer, Georgia. And then there's another hiker that meets him in Springer. And this guy that he met had information that might explain why there was never a missing persons report filed. So he says they met at a shelter and they were the only two that were there. So they were able to form like a closer bond because there was no one else to talk to. So this guy says they stayed up late talking and exchanging stories. He knew him as Denham, and he said that Denham shared that he didn't speak to his parents anymore because his father was really abusive when he was growing up. He mentioned a sister but didn't give any specifics of like what her name was, how old she was, where she lived. He also mentioned an ex-girlfriend. Same thing, like no description or details on where she was or when that relationship had ended. I guess they also talked a lot about like science, like sci-fi stuff. He said specifically a lot of Doctor Who. And then this guy also had learned that Denham had been in the tech industry for a really long time as well. I guess in the morning they spent a little bit more time together and then they went on their way and they didn't see each other again. So after that, he's photographed on December 29th, 2017, and he's at Salem Church Road. And I believe this is where the paths cross, so where he wanted to switch over from the Appalachian Trail to the Pinhoti Trail. So that's about the last time he's seen for about a month. And then the next time he's seen is on January 24th, 2018, and that's when he meets that trail angel who was the first one to call in and provide a photo of him. But when she meets him, remember, she said that his name was mostly Harmless. So now, I don't know if it was like on the switch on the trails that got switched up, but he no longer is going by Denham anymore. And from this point forward, everybody who meets him knows him as mostly Harmless. There's lots of people that think that this was a name based on his love for sci-fi, because I guess like the final book of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is called Mostly Harmless. But I also read that it was given to him around a campfire one night when some hikers asked him to come and join them. And they were like, "You don't bite, right?" And then he said, "No, I'm mostly harmless." And then they were like, "Okay, mostly harmless, come have a seat." So that I think is probably how he got that name, because from my understanding, your trail name is given to you. So even if he liked sci-fi and thought it would be a good name, you don't pick your name. He didn't also seem like very experienced as well. So maybe he did. I mean, I don't know. That sounds like more of an accurate story though. And I think it's cute. Sometime in January as well, he meets a hiker, and this guy says that as they're talking, it comes up that Mostly Harmless is only doing about 10 miles a day, which, I mean, to me sounds like freaking intense, but I guess like in the hiking world, that's really not a lot of miles to hit in a day. And I mean, I guess it makes sense when you're doing like really long distance. But yeah, he mentions that he's only doing 10 miles a day for his health, but he doesn't get into specifics. I know there's quite a few photos of him with knee braces on, so I don't know if it was like a limitation. I also feel like knee braces would be something like very common when you're hiking, but I'm not too sure. So then on February 22nd, he's in Monticello. It's just painful, you guys. I think it's Monticello, Florida. And here he comes across two female hikers. They're going in opposite direction, but they stop to chat. And so these girls also find out that he's hiking without GPS or a phone. So they stop to give him like as much detail as they possibly can to like really help him along the way. 2 days after that, he meets a camper at a campsite in Florida, and he tells him he had recently been staying with his sister in Sarasota, Florida. So this is the first time that possibly we know if he did have a sister, this could be where she's from. I believe that's the only encounter that's come forward this far though that has given like any home base or like detail for this sister. And he also shared with this guy that he was really enjoying his hike and trying to take it all in because he didn't know how long he could still do it because of his health. At the end of February, he's also photographed. And on March 12th, he meets another hiker, and this guy, he stops and talks with him for over an hour. He said that he found him so friendly. He said he was in really good spirits, and to him, he appeared to be in good health. Mostly Harmless tells him that he started in Bear Mountain in New York. He said that he was on the Pinhoti Trail, but it was really cold and slow moving. So he says he took a road trip with some girls that he met in Alabama to the beginning of the Florida Trail in Pensacola. I don't think these girls have ever been identified or come forward either. Again, it would be really interesting to like hear their story and see what kind of information they have, because generally in those situations, especially if they were like friends and they were picking him up, you'd be like asking so many questions. It would be interesting to hear, you know, what these people who had like longer amounts of times with him had for like deeper information on him. So on April 15th in Okeechobee, Florida, it's believed that the last photo of Mostly Harmless is taken. He looks skinny in it compared to like the earlier ones, but not like 83 pounds skinny. But here, I mean, it just racks my brain so much because 3 months later is when he's found at the Nobles campground, and that's apparently only 7 miles from his last sighting in April. So he would have done less than his designated 10 miles per day in a 3-month span. But when the autopsy results came back, there was no sign of disease or an illness. He didn't have like any prescription medication with him. I think there was like some Tylenol or something like that within his system, but nothing like over the recommended dose. And again, probably very common for like inflammation and stuff while you're hiking. So to this day, he's still at the medical examiner's office. No one has come forward saying that they recognize him or know him besides hikers, which is crazy to me because it's like so many people have come forward and see his photo and been like, oh my God, like he left such a lasting impression and he was so friendly and they know him, but it's only hikers. No family, no friends, no co-workers. There's been nothing for 2 years. I mean, like even somebody who regularly saw him selling milk at like a grocery store or like a barber, like he appeared to like keep it, you know, trim and maintained even while he's hiking. So it just like that part just like boggles my mind. And when investigators tried to tie back the name Ben Billamy to any missing person report with like his general description, they came back with nothing. So they're pretty confident that it was an alias. It sounds like investigators think that a big key to solving this mystery is going to be within the notebooks that were found in his tent. He had a lot of computer codes written down, and then when IT specialists looked at it, it said that it looked like he was writing codes down for a game called Screeps. And I mean, I am so not computer literate at all. This game sounds intense, like you would have to be like quite knowledgeable in computers and like coding. Even just like hearing about the game be just described in like layman's terms, I was just like, it was over my head. But it sounds like something like a maybe where you build like your own colony or something, but it's like in real time, like you're required to work it like 24/7, which is like impossible. So you create these codes so that like your colony can function and keep like growing and thriving without you. I don't know. That could be so wrong, but that was my understanding of it. So these codes that he was writing down in this notebook seemed to be like different like functions and ways to make this game and his like world function without him physically doing it. But they think like within these games, you've got, again, it's frustrating because it's like code names, so no one's going to put like their real name on there. But you've got to create an account, and then from there, I guess the program you need to create the account requires a credit card. So they're hopeful that maybe he used a credit card and somebody within that community is able to decipher like which player on the boards just stopped all of their gaming around the time that he he started hiking. It sounds like super intense, and there's also a chance that nothing will lead back to a credit card if they are able to narrow down a player. Because I think you can go to a computer store and buy like a card with cash that you can use to purchase the account required for the game. Yeah, way over my head. It sounds like a really interesting way to try to narrow this down. Maybe just because I'm so not understanding that world, I don't know how that's gonna tie into like discovering him, but it would be really interesting. A lot of people also think that DNA is gonna be what solves this. And that's kind of where my gut goes, probably just for like the obsession of like Dateline and cold case files. But recently there was a fundraiser created to raise money to have a genealogy DNA test done. They needed $5,000 and they already have that requirement met. And I think they've already started the testing. So now it's like a waiting game to see if anything comes back. I think the way that they can identify is to see if any relative, I think even if it's like more distant, has DNA within the database, probably from like Ancestry.com or like 23andMe. I think that's how they get it. I also think you can like submit to this company to try and help with these types of cases. So yeah, it is super fascinating. It'll be so interesting to see like what comes up. And I know so many people within this community of trying to find out who he is are just like holding their breath, looking every single day. And like I said, I mean, I'm only new, but I'm so like invested and I'm like, we need to figure this out. I also feel a little nervous in a way for the results. There's a part of me that just wonders why he tried so hard and took so many necessary steps to not be identified. I mean, besides being like photographed, but like there's no trail, there's no ID trail, there's no, footprint from his phone and data. So in my mind, it's like if that story of an abusive father is true and he's been working so hard over the past year of hiking and changing, who he was in the past and finding this new happiness in his life, it makes me nervous to potentially send him back to a place where he didn't feel safe and he feared. I hope he's at peace. Going off of all of the reports of the people who saw him in that last year, there's a little bit of comfort in hearing that it sounds like for the first time in his life, he found joy and happiness. And so that he got to experience that, even if it was for a short amount of time. And I mean, we say this every episode almost. It's just, it's so heartbreaking when it appears like somebody so deserving and kind and friendly and happy gets that taken away from them when it seems like they're just at that like brink of like the next joy and phase in their life. My final thoughts on this are that I don't think that he had a disease or illness. I don't think that he intended to die. And when I was reading about how he was found, I came across several stories of people who had family members who had died of accidental starvation. Just like the name, you're just like, how do you accidentally starve yourself? And when they were kind of explaining the process and like the feeling and how some people even themselves almost accidentally starved, it makes so much sense. I don't know if anybody has tried like intermittent fasting out there, but there is a point in just like even, within like 24 hours where that feeling of like hunger completely subsides. And there's people who are able to fast for like a month at a time. And I mean, granted, most of these cases, it's somebody who's obese and they're still properly getting the electrolytes and sodium and all of that stuff that their body needs, but you're not living like every single day like, oh my God, how many days has it been since I eat? Like you're just not hungry. And then just paired with his inexperience with like calorie intake too, it sounds like something that could happen. I mean, you just get to the point where you're not really that hungry, and maybe he was like, oh, like I'm not that hungry, so I'm gonna have a bite of this energy bar, and maybe even halfway through the bar you feel full, so you're really not getting the nutrients that you need for this type of lifestyle. But because he had been so new to it, I don't think that he knew that. The one thing I'm just really confused about is the last last 3 months of his life, how he didn't even like make a dent in his travels. So I don't know if that's just because he may have like just taken up somewhere and stayed for a little while. He could have possibly liked the area, and then when he was found, he was just back on the trail starting again. I mean, there's so many situations and scenarios, I guess. I guess there's also the point of him just like feeling like he couldn't carry on. I don't know. It's seriously so puzzling to me. It's like just when you have one theory, it goes out the window and something new comes in. I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are on this. You know, I love to hear from you in the comments, and I always say it when we do the mystery ones. It's so interesting to see like everybody's different ideas like collectively, because it's theories that we probably aren't even thinking of, and who knows, you know, like it could be the theory that breaks the case. As soon as I have an update on this, I will absolutely let you guys know. It's something I'm going to be following very, very closely. I'll also leave links to a Facebook group that I find so informative and helpful. They're very respectful too, and they have a lot of knowledge if you want to just, you know, join it and read through and keep updated on this as well. I'm going to link a podcast that I listened to as well from the Collier County Sheriff's Department, which is who originally found him. It's really interesting to kind of like hear everybody who was involved in this talk about him. So yeah, I will leave that for you guys in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so, so much. I may not see you guys this Saturday, and it breaks my heart just saying it because I'm gonna miss you terribly. I'm trying to put something together, but we're also gonna be a little bit off the grid. So I don't know how like that's gonna work in terms of Wi-Fi and everything. So if you don't see me on Saturday, that is why. But I will be back for our True Crime Wine Wednesday. I will definitely miss you so terribly by then if I don't see you on Saturday. In the meantime though, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye. We're gonna be alright.